Hey everyone, welcome to this quick walkthrough slash speed painting thingamami. I didn't intend to do something like this, so when it occurred to me someone out there may be interested in how I painted them, I started recording my process. Unfortunately, you'll only be seeing Sayaka after this one because I've already made Madoka, Kyoko, and Homura, but the process is pretty much the same. I think, yeah, at the beginning, you should have seen me do. You should have seen a really general sketch I made of Mami, and that's how my process is. I always sketch, and it doesn't have to be really detailed or anything. I just need to know if what I see in my head is what is how good it will look like on the screen or sometimes on paper. And sometimes it doesn't work out the way you want it to. Sometimes it could be because what you see in your head isn't quite what isn't doesn't look as good as you want it on paper, or it's something always there's always a reason why it doesn't work out. So I like to sketch, and just to see how the composition is, just to see if how the pose is awkward, or just to see if it looks good. So once I'm happy with the sketch, I move on to the lining, and that's where I start lining. And here you can see that I'm not quite following what I sketched. If you can see it all, I think you can. Yes, you can. You can see that I'm not really following my sketch, especially with the hair. I mean, everything else I will follow, and I followed, but the hair. What happened was that I wanted the hair to look like it was, the wind was blowing into her hair, and her drill hair was flowing. I call her drill hair because they look like drills to me. They're flowing, they're flying in the wind, and they're flying towards her chest. But then I realized I didn't even make the bangs very wind-like. Like, it's just the bangs are sitting on her head normally, but her drill hair is her drill pigtails are flying. So then I thought it didn't look realistic, because you can't have one part of the hair doing one thing and the other part doing another thing. So I opted to change the direction of the hair, and it actually worked out pretty good. I liked the way it turned out. And so sometimes when you sketch, it may never go the way you want it, and I think that's one thing as an artist that you have to keep in mind is you have to be open to change. You have to not stick to the plan so much sometimes, because sometimes it's just better to change it, and you have to be willing to change it, even though you work so hard on it. Even when you've made a complete art and then you realize something is wrong with the art, if it has to be changed, it has to be changed, even though you have to take maybe another hour or two to make it look good. And it's just how it is. That's why for me, sketching is very important, and lining is very important. I've seen artists who just paint with blocked in colors, and then they'll just slowly sculpt it from there, and it's amazing. I can't do it though. I'm not really good. Yeah, I like to line my art, so it gives me a very good guideline of where my hands or arms or even eyes should go. Maybe in the future I maybe would do it, but as of now, especially with anime art, and lining, I like lining. Really helps me. But except for, of course, except for when I'm painting semi-realistic art, I do a general sketch and I paint it from there. But when I do anime or manga art, I always line. And as you can see here, if you're wondering, I'm working in my pen here. I use 3 tools for Actually, I pretty much use 3 tools for anything in paint. Sai. I rarely. I use the brush and the airbrush tool rarely, and I, of course, okay, maybe I use the eraser tool too. So technically, I use 4 tools, but but as I was saying, I use 4 tools, and I rarely ever use the airbrush tool. I rarely ever use the brush tool. I only use the pen, the marker, and the watercolor tool. I use pen to line and to add like maybe white highlights, those tiny pretty highlights that reflect light, and then I use marker to put down my colors, and then I use the watercolor to. Well, in watercolor I call it dilute, but in here I think it's more appropriate to call it blending. Blending, yeah, I use it to blend. And that's pretty much what I use. And of course for the pen, when I line, I never line it completely black. I use kind of a darkish gray, and then even then I use my opacity is sometimes it's between 50 to 70 depending on how light I want it. And I like the look of a gray pen buildup. It's my preference really. It could also be that I've coming from a more traditional art background. I like the look of lines getting darker and darker. Again, it's just personal preference. You can do whatever the heck you want. For this picture, when I was painting on Mami, I was hoping to give her more of a because Mami, if you know Mami and you actually look at her art, she tends to have this kind of lazy, smug look. At least in my opinion, she does. She's just always just smiling, having that lazy eye look, and going kind of expression. So I try to give her that same expression, but I make her look like she's radiating, and that's why I want her hair kind of flying in the first place. But that didn't work out. But in this case, I still wanted her to have that, especially the way she poses herself. So I really try to keep that in mind as I'm doing this. And here I'm refining her again, adding shadows, adding the blush, referencing her, same thing. There's nothing really I'm doing that's really different. And and then I'm coloring her eyes, and I went from, instead of using brown, I actually used like a yellow, dark, a little mid-tone, a little lower than mid-tone dark green to do her iris. Yeah, iris. Not iris, her pupils. And I switched between browns and greens. Her eyes are a little odd. They're gold, obviously, but they have like browns and green undertones. So that's why I did for her. It was actually very fun to color her eyes because I went over it a few times trying to give it a bit of a green and brown along with some yellows, and so it was pretty good. It was fun. In terms of how much fun I had coloring Mami, she was okay. I don't like the character very much. People love her. She's a really good design though. I love her magical girl design. I really really like it. I just don't like the character very much. But I still had a lot of fun painting her because her hair was quite a challenge. It looks really really easy, but hard to pull off. At least in my opinion. Maybe other people might disagree. Maybe people might think her dress is a little hard to pull off. I thought the hair was a little hard to pull off, and her expression was hard to pull off because Mami has a signature look, and it's not like it's cocky or it's overly smug or happy-go-lucky like Madoka's. She has a special expression, so it was interesting and challenging to paint her and to get her right. And as you can see, I'm still obsessing over her skin and refining her skin, her hair, her lips. That's why I do. I don't like, for the most part, when I paint something, whether it is the hair or the face, I paint it till it's good enough, and then I move on to something else and I come back again because it helps me see what I did wrong, and or that gives me a fresh eye. So you always see me refining something again, even though it might have looked good. I'm making it better. And for I don't know how I don't know how the other artist, the one who gave me the one who made the tutorial, I don't know how she paints it, but for me, I just lay down the colors, and then I take the watercolor, and I just take it and I kind of spread it over the shape. And for me, texture is about as important as is how strong the color is. And in watercolor, what you normally do is that you should always paint from light to dark, because at least when you paint it light, you mess up, you can erase it. But if you paint it dark, you can't really erase it, or you can't really rub it off. So you should, that's the rule, that you should always paint from light to dark. And for me, I've tried painting it. How I normally paint art is that I always lay down the flat mid-tone colors, and then I'll add light and shadow as I go. Some people do it differently. Some people, they paint it dark and then add light as they go, or they paint light and add shadows as they go. But for me, I do it very strangely, where I paint down the mid-tones, and then I'll add light and shadow as I go. And there's no real right way to do it. It's just artist preference, and that's my preference. But here, and when I'm trying to mimic watercolor, I have to paint from light to dark. So you see me slowly building up colors. And also it helps because I'm mixing in some yellows with the greens, and how I do that is, I want to say instinct, but that's not a really good answer. If you study the color wheels, yellow and yellow greens are next to each other, so that's how I would choose it. And also, if you wonder why I colored Mami's shirt green, even though it looks kind of white, it's not really white. It's kind of a light green, and I just give her more of a green. It is fan art after all, and the most important thing is to have fun and learn from it. As I learned here, I should have made her chest a lot bigger. You see, it's smaller. If you can, you see the reference pictures. They're pretty big, and I'm just like, God, I never noticed it until I started drawing her. And I know this is really inappropriate, but I don't know what I don't know what to do. So you won't see it here, because what happened, I don't remember if I said this already, but I later realized that the reason it doesn't look quite like Mami was because her chest wasn't big enough, if that was any indication. So I had to I didn't feel like drawing all over again and then painting it all over again. So what I did was that I took it to Photoshop, and I cut a part of it out, pasted it on top, enlarged it by a little bit, not too much, just a little bit. So because when you minimize something from a really big image, it looks good when it's minimized, but when you take something that's small and enlarge it, it doesn't look good. So I just made it a little bit bigger to make it look like her chest a little bigger, and then erased what was not necessary, and then I was just like, good enough. It could have been bigger, but I was happy enough with it. I didn't want to, obsess over it when I was already obsessing over other things. But yeah, I love Mami's outfit. Very, very well designed. Her guns are cool too. Actually, now that I think, I forgot to mention that, for Sayaka, I actually I first started Madoka, and I just wanted to painted it down to the chest. And then Homura, I painted down a little further, and then with Kyoko, I painted it down to her waist. And then with Mami, I painted it down a little below her waist. And then with Sayaka, I painted it all the way down to her waist, plus her skirt. Because when I actually post it up, you'll see what I mean. Because the way she was positioned, if I didn't paint her arms and her hand, it would not look good. It would just look really odd. So I ended up painting all the way down to her hips, something a little bit past her hips, and I'm just thinking that I would have to redraw the other girls. Well, not redraw, but add on to the other girls, because it just looks really odd if Sayaka's the only one who has a drawing of her down to her past her waist into her past her hips, and I have all these other girls who are randomly getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So I have to keep it. The reason I did down to the chest was that I wanted to paint them really fast, and I wanted to make them into stickers. But Sayaka, I don't know what I was doing. It just I didn't feel like redrawing her, and I really liked the way she already looked. So that's why I ended up doing it. And so again, like my own philosophy about being open to change, just accepting change. That's what I did. So I have to go back and redo, add on to the other girls. And of course, I'll be adding on to Mami later too, and I will not be showing you that, but you can see on my my website when once it goes up that I added a little bit of her skirt just to keep it consistent with Sayaka because I really have no choice. But see, yeah, you saw me. I was painting. I added some browns to the greens to give it give it a little darker, and it technically is a little lighter than what it is in the official art, but it's watercolor art, so I think I can get rid of that, and I like it. It looks good. Also, in here you won't see me painting the white lace that's on top of her corset because I forgot to do that too. When I was like, oh, I'm done, and I looked at it, I'm like, darn, I forgot the lace part, so I had to go back and color that in. But I recorded it, but I didn't add it in here because it wouldn't. Again, it made this. This is already like 20 minutes long. I don't want to make it any more longer than it already is. But if you have any questions regarding my process or what tools I used or something more specific, feel free to leave me a comment and let me know, because also I speak really fast, so if you did not catch any of that, I'm sorry. So please, if you have any questions that I might have covered in here, but since I was speaking so fast, you did not catch it, ask me and I'll try my best to answer you. Just so you know, I have a tendency to give more information out than I should, meaning that I kind of over-explain things, so I might overwhelm you with the information, like I am doing now, I think. One thing I like to do, when I'm painting, regardless what I'm painting, I like to flip the canvas to catch my mistakes, and I think that I shouldn't do it so often to catch my mistakes because I think my eyes get used to seeing it both ways. But I do it anyway because I need to see if it looks right away. So yeah, I flip it quite often. And here you see me really trying to give it a kind of textured watercolor look, tethered, feathery look. So I'm just trying to recreate it, and my advice to you is, if you don't normally paint with watercolors, look and you don't have the money, or you don't want to go out and buy watercolors and paint them and see how they actually react on paper in real life, then the least you can do is reference how watercolor looks like on paper and canvases, and you can just do that by doing a Google search, and you can see. And even then, I've seen other artists who try to make it a watercolor look, and they use references, but it never looks quite watercolored because they've never painted watercolors in life. And when you never really painted watercolors in life, the experience is a lot more. Experiences teaches you a lot more. Most, So even though you have references, especially for something like a medium like watercolor, it doesn't. Sometimes what you reference and what you think you see may not be the same thing. I'm not saying that my watercolor is better than theirs. I'm just saying, if you really want to create what looks like a watercolor effect, or impression of them, or inspiration on them, or whatever, really look at how watercolor behaves if you don't have the money or the time or whatever it is that you cannot do. Really look at how watercolor behaves in actual real life. Anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much it. The picture you see here. Thank you for watching, and either subscribe or comments and like this video. Thank you.